Using GitHub Copilot to convert an ASP.NET WebForms applications to the latest Blazor. I'll be giving Copilot this challenge and delegating the entire task of migrating a solution from the old .NET Framework to the latest version. As a developer with very little experience in using Copilot, before starting this whole challenge and this whole upgrade, my expectations are very, very high. I'm taking it for granted that there will be complications, given the .NET solution being migrated is actually quite simple. If you want to know how to get started with Copilot in Visual Studio 2026, watch this separate video, and the process is actually very simple once you have a GitHub account. Here's the current application, which is really just one page that creates a product and stores it into a database. On the WebForms project, the page uses a user control, which basically just contains the bulk of the form. Then there's also the page itself is from a master page. So really, I'm just trying to take this format or this organization, have a straight port of this into Blazor. The rest of the solution is relatively well organized into separate projects. The front end, which is currently a WebForms, simply just makes use of the other projects and services that contains most of the logic. So I haven't done the mistake of lumping most of the code or the business logic into the code behind in the WebForms project. So now there's a data access project that contains the repositories implemented in Entity Framework 6. Most developers would be aware that EF Core, which works on later .NET versions, has some breaking changes from Entity Framework 6. For example, how the DB context is set up and how the migrations are run. Copilot should be able to handle this without a problem. This solution is on the old .NET Framework. In this old project, I'm also using AutoFac as the dependency injection container. WebForms didn't have a built-in DR container, so this is more or less forced to use a third party such as AutoFac or Ninject. The new .NET projects have a default container, but I want to keep using this AutoFac even after the migration. I want to just keep on using AutoFac. I have a very simple integration test project which runs against a real database, so there are no mocks. There's nothing like that. And it's a very simple test. If I'm adding a new item into the table, it should just be able to tell that one more item was added. So there was an increment of 1 in the table. Also, there's a composition root project, which pretty much wires up all the objects, their dependencies. So all the instantiation is done in this one project. And I'm reusing this project on the actual web and also in the tests. And if we were to look at this application that's using the .NET Framework, just running it in a browser, it's really just a simple create page and nothing much to it, just a simple form. Obviously, this has got to be converted. Copilot is going to have to do all the work of converting and migrating. When making this video, I'm still very new to Copilot, but given this project is very, very simple, my expectations is that I shouldn't be spending more than 30 minutes just to have it migrated to Blazor. It's really just one page. And if things do take more than 1 hour, I'm going to have to start questioning the benefits versus if I had just done things by hand, if I just manually done the migration myself. Now for the prompt that I'm going to give to Copilot, I haven't been specific in terms of the actual versions. I'm only stating the latest version of Blazor, and in vague terms, just use the latest version and use the latest version of AutoFac. So source control, I want to say this again, source control. It's always important to have a layered source control and a clean backup strategy. So if working on a large solution, it would be reasonable to have both a separate backup. This would be besides just the source control branches. And now let me just create a separate branch and actually now start the fun. Here's the prompt. Given the solution that was created in ASP.NET WebForms, converted to the latest ASP.NET Blazor Server. as much as possible, have C# code in the code behind and not on the Razor pages where applicable. Use the latest versions of Entity Framework. For the dependency injection, use the appropriate version of AutoFac. So we're going to send this prompt to Copilot. And on my very first attempt, I realized that I will need to be working under agent mode. This will allow Copilot to directly make changes to all the files and the projects. So obviously that's the whole point. There's no need for me to be manually copying and pasting, like if I was using a web agent or let's say ChatGPT. So let's just get some popcorn, chips, cool drink, sweets, because this show is not going to end well. Too much back and forth chatting. Copilot does appear to be very busy in the background. After about 10 minutes, and this is, by the way, a very long time given that this is AI, it's not a human, there's not that much of a progress. Most of the projects are still not converted from .NET Framework. After more back and forth chatting with Copilot, it's fair, it has to ask me continuously to make irreversible changes to these files, and you can opt in to confirm or submit every file change, or you can just say allow for this entire session. At this point, I'm still using the bare bones free subscription, limited to about 50 chats per month. Copilot does attempt a conversion to Blazor, but it's .NET 8, which is not the latest version of .NET. At some point, Copilot needs to make actual changes to the solution and the projects. So ideally, the entire solution or all of Visual Studio needs to be shut down, but so that it can upgrade them to .NET 8. But now the problem is that the chat agent is linked to this solution. It needs to be open. I don't have a way at this time when making this video. I don't know how I can get it to make changes outside of the actual chat mode, or make changes that are outside of the solution. And this is what really ended up taking a lot of time. Effectively, the solution is locked. It can't be changed. But now Copilot keeps giving me a wrong suggestion. Eventually, one of its suggestions is that all the projects should be unloaded, which I do unload them. And after this, still some very, 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 very slow progress. Copilot seems to go around in circles, or it's too slow. I think in the background, it's actually building and then running all the tests. And maybe in future, I might have to just explicitly tell it to not build and just maybe do the conversion and don't run any tests, and then only build right at the end. And after about 3 hours, it still hasn't moved the connection string, which is like a basic simple mistake. The connection string still hasn't been moved from the original app config, but the tests are passing. As for the actual Blazor web application, there's nothing. 3 hours later, zero, nothing. And at 4 hours, the solution does compile, but the WebForms project hasn't been fully migrated. There is almost like just an empty Blazor project, but the other supporting files are okay. The integration tests are running without a problem, but basically the migration is not done 4 hours later. So now just doing a quick check in terms of NuGet packages, which could maybe cause a conflict. The good thing, fortunately, Copilot just kept them at the same version. I mean, this is going to minimize breaking changes as much as possible. So ultimately, my very first attempt in converting a simple .NET Framework WebForms to the new Blazor, it just outright failed. In another video, I'll attempt this migration, but manually create the projects by hand, and Copilot can just fill in the blanks. This is going to be especially useful for a Blazor project for which there are a number of templates, and I'm suspecting that Copilot might have just picked the wrong one.